As I mentioned before, I'm the director for the Johns Hopkins Center for Occupational Health, and it is funded by NIOSH. Uh, and there are 18 such centers around the country, and I'm the director for one of them. And we provide training in a variety of areas in occupational health, industrial hygiene, and I'm an industrial hygienist. We also have occupational physicians, occupational nursing, occupational health psychology, and injury prevention, and also occupational epidemiology. When Chris Chesky approached me almost about 2 years ago, and he said he's interested in talking to us about occupational health, it was a new one because we had never been approached by anybody from Peabody ever. So I was very excited. Both my kids had learned music. One of them is in 11th grade. He's learning music even now. And so it was very exciting, and I wanted to learn more about the overlap between occupational health and music. And over the next couple of years, we've been talking, and at some point I said, Chris, you need to come and address our center's monthly seminar series. And he brought his trumpet. And it was probably the most exciting seminar our students received. And it just energized our doctoral and master's students, not to mention the faculty. And since then, we have had a number of research initiatives. And I want to talk a little bit in my time here about both what we have accomplished or we're trying to accomplish very locally at Johns Hopkins, but also what I think should happen on a national or maybe international level. So in our department, in the School of Public Health, we have dedicated some space for the development of a joint lab that will facilitate the type of research that Peabody, Public Health, Material Science that Tom talked about, and the School of Medicine. And we can have this dedicated space to do research in a variety of areas, looking at testing of different types of earplugs, having a large space in which different frequencies of sound can be generated from very low to very high frequencies. It is soundproofed, so the rest of the faculty are protected. And the testing and certification of earplugs. That is sort of an empty space, wide open, ripe for us to move into and provide services in that regard. And then a musculoskeletal aspect, which is very important, and there's a lot of interest in looking at video capture and looking at the sensors placed on muscles and looking at their excitation and which muscles are being excited relating to different types of movement. So all of that is a joint venture that we are embarking on. A second area where we have collaborated is the center. It provides pilot project funding. It's not a lot of money. I think 10 to 15,000 spent over a year or sometimes a year and a half. And we awarded our first pilot project award. And you saw the results of that this morning. And I'll tell you, I've never, the musical performance you saw, I wish all our progress reports were that exciting instead of like a written report that I would have to read. It was much more interesting and really captured what they did and why it's important and the emotional impact of it. And I'm going to make that a requirement. But do it in song or don't do it, So, and as Tom mentioned before, we are also working with his group and the folks in material science on this earplug development project. So those are things that we are doing it at the local level. At the national level, here's sort of my dream of where this field can go. There's a huge potential for research, as many speakers before me have mentioned. But I'm going to talk a little bit from the epidemiological and public health study perspective. There are a number of long-term cohort studies that can be done, looking at noise-induced hearing loss among musicians, looking at musculoskeletal disorders among performing artists of all kind. So the NIH and NIOSH both carry out these kinds of long-term studies. So there are long-term cohorts on agricultural workers, for example. There are long-term studies on coal mining workers. There are long-term studies on firefighters. Why not one on musicians and other performing artists? They are equally serious health impacts. They are equally traceable over long periods of time, which is important to do a long-term study on. So it's an eminently feasible, viable thing to do. We just need the will and, of course, the resources to do it. The second area is the creation of large-scale registries and surveillance systems. Again, the same communities that I talked about, firefighting. Firefighters have registries that follow different health outcomes, cancer registries for firefighters, respiratory diseases more generally on firefighters. And so those kinds of things are funded and run by state departments of health, sometimes at the national level. There is a registry for coal mining, or mining in general, not just coal mining, and it's run out of the Mine Safety and Health Administration. And it's it's not that big of a leap of imagination to think that we could have similar registries for musicians. And there are other types of intervention trials, randomized controlled trials, any number of studies that can be done. And so that's sort of my research pitch. And one last thing I want to mention, following up on our previous two speakers who mentioned this idea of certification and accreditation. So as I mentioned, I'm an industrial hygienist, and I'm a certified industrial hygienist. And the idea is, industrial hygienists, what do? Their goal is to protect the workers under their charge in an institution. And the goal is that, if I was an industrial hygienist employed by, let's say, a multinational company that has plants in Texas and plant in China, we cannot have different standards of care. An industrial hygienist would provide the same sort of diagnosis in both countries, and it should not be industrial hygiene dependent. It should be sort of uniform across globally. And so that's the sort of, as Nabil mentioned, we cannot have individual-based codes of conduct. We should have sort of global and sort of professional codes of conduct that don't depend on individuals. And so it's there in engineering, it's there in industrial hygiene, it's there in a variety of fields, and I think it's a great opportunity for occupational health and music to have that kind of a code. So with that, I'll stop, and thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be a part of this panel and to contribute a perspective from material science and engineering, a discipline grounded in problem solving and design of practical applications. My current research focuses on hearing protection through a Johns Hopkins Discovery Award on novel materials for custom-tuned earplugs for musicians. We're developing earplugs that preserve acoustic fidelity while reducing exposure to harmful sound levels. The PIs on this project are Professors Michael Kessler in the Whiting School of Engineering, Chris Chesky in the Peabody Institute and School of Medicine, and Ramachandran in the Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm leading the research efforts in the lab and am partially supported by this grant. We're developing advanced materials with tailored dampening properties and using acoustic testing and finite element modeling to understand how earplug design affects sound transmission. Last summer, Elaine Gia, an undergraduate student in the BDP Summer Research Program, who is a dual major in computer science and public health, initiated the modeling work in ComSol. Her contributions lay the foundation for what is being carried forward by one of our master's students. And on Friday, Elaine will give a plenary talk at the PAMA International Symposium about her work last summer. Elaine is continuing to work with Dr. Chesky on an unrelated project. We have 3 master's students working on the earplug project, 2 from chemical and biomolecular engineering, and 1 from mechanical engineering. These are jointly advised by me and Dr. Kessler in material science and engineering. 2 are developing and characterizing new polymers, and the 3rd is focused on finite element analysis. This summer, they've been joined by 4 additional BDP summer research undergraduates who are on the front row here and have been helping. They've also played an integral role. For the last month, they've played an integral role in the social media outreach for this summit. They will soon be, they will soon be transitioning to spending the rest of the summer helping us get the new KEMAR mannequin system operational. The KEMAR, which is part of Dr. Chesky's lab, will be temporarily housed in the Polymer Composites Research Group lab in Maryland Hall until his lab renovations are completed. The students are developing the specifications for the data acquisition platform and setting up the infrastructure for acoustic testing. The interdisciplinary nature of this research has generated a tremendous response. We had far more students interested in joining than we could accommodate. That enthusiasm from engineering, public health, and music underscores how resonant this topic is with the next generation of researchers. One of the broader goals of this summit is to advocate for clearly defined professional responsibility in music education. In engineering, these responsibilities are codified. I completed an ABET accredited engineering degree and took the Fundamentals of Engineering exam in my final year. I'm registered as an engineer intern in the state of Arkansas, and although my licensure path was interrupted while working overseas, I plan to return to it. But even before licensure, our ethical obligations as engineers are clear. Section 240.15A1 of the NCEES Model Rule states, licensees shall be cognizant that their first and foremost responsibility is to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the public when performing services for clients and employers. This comes from the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, and this is not just guidance, it's enforceable. It informs how we teach, design, and conduct research in engineering. And I believe music education could benefit from a similarly structured approach to professional ethics, where health and safety are recognized as shared responsibilities, not left solely to individuals. One of the tools that we've been using in engineering to guide risk reduction is the hierarchy of controls, and we saw this in Dr. Howard's presentation earlier. And it ranks these strategies from most effective to least: elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and finally, personal protective equipment, or PPE. In music, especially when it comes to noise exposure, we often skip directly to PPE, earplugs. But PPE is the last line of defense. It depends on perfect usage and individual compliance, which is rarely guaranteed in real-world settings. Instead, we should ask, can we eliminate or at least reduce hazardous exposure through smarter rehearsal scheduling? Can we substitute quieter practice techniques or alternative instrumentation? Can we implement engineering controls like acoustic shields? Can we apply administrative controls, such as limiting exposure time? We should turn to personal protective equipment only after addressing these upstream strategies. My research supports the final safeguard, but comprehensive occupational protection begins earlier at the systemic level. Through interdisciplinary collaboration and a shared sense of professional responsibility, we can create safer occupational environments, support longer musical careers, and protect the people behind the performance. Thank you.